let's sit according to the image, and we can share the two mics. So I'm going to start us off with a round of intros. My name is Amanda Cassatt, aka Amanda.eth, founder and CEO of Serotonin.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas. Before I introduce myself, thanks a lot for still being here. It's such a humbling experience today with all these important topics, and now we speak a little bit about sports. Yeah, regarding myself, I'm in the midst of founding my own company, so actually the name that is up there is sort of irrelevant soon. It's in sports data analytics. I've been in the sports business for a while now, feeling that we need to do something about data analytics, but there's also a Web3 side of things, but we'll get back to that soon. I think if you remember anything from me, I'm the guy tackling things head first, so I've done a few projects and I'm happy to share today.
Hi, my name's Alexandra Lloyd. I'm actually working in anti-money laundering for YouHodler, but I'm very excited to be on the panel and talk a bit more broadly about the impact of tokenization in culture, sport, everything.
And let's see if it works. Oh, surprise. Hi, my name is Julian. I'm the CFO of Chiliz, which is a Web3 company dedicated to sports and entertainment. We created, I guess we'll talk about fan tokens, which are Web3 membership for sports entities. And hope we'll have an interactive session, so feel free to ask questions so we can exchange.
Hi everyone, my name is Célia. I'm working at ThinkSport, which is a B2B association in the sport industry. We're based in Lausanne, and I'm basically innovation manager there. I'm handling an innovation booster, which is a program from InnoSwiss, and I'm helping a federation or anyone involved in sport and physical activity to develop new ideas using design thinking method. And we have a budget also from InnoSwiss to help them. And happy to be here, really a newbie on the Web3 topic. We have a few stuff in the backyard, but more to bring the innovation and sport side to the table.
Thanks, everyone. We have such super interesting people on our panel. We'll make sure to have some time for questions at the end and have that interactive session. But just to kick us off, when you talk to a sports team or league or a big entertainment company about crypto, Web3, tokenization, what is the pitch? What do you say to them about what they can do in Web3, why they should get into Web3 that wasn't possible for them in Web2?
I sort of felt that I'm going to be the first one to answer this super difficult question. So let me start off by saying I'm quite sure that, Julian, you're going to have a really nice use case to explain later on. So my pitch would not be in your direction. I'm actually a fan of blockchain because I think it's governance technology. So whenever I talk to federations in my projects or even sports clubs, I'm always asking them, do you guys have a governance issue that you want to talk about? Because at the end, this sounds super dry, but that's what we can blockchain really use for. And I have some projects I can talk about later on, but as I said, it's a bit dry, but it's essentially what's working well for me with my projects. Shall we go this way?
Whoever wants to answer is great.
Yeah, I guess we'll just go in this direction because we already started. But so when it comes to tokenization, my expertise would really be in like ownership design and the legalities of that, because my background is as a lawyer. And so I would say, like, look, it really depends on how you want to engage with your fandom. Like, you can use tokens, as Julian's company has demonstrated, to really engage, give special rewards. You can also use it for ticketing, for making efficiencies in your system. But the great thing about Web3 is you can connect these organizations directly to the fans, where before there's always been intermediaries. So there's been stores who are the ones who sold the football jerseys. There's been Sky, for instance, televising the competition. So it's a way to really identify who your fandom is. And with YouHodler, we realized the power of fandom because we sponsor Torino. I don't just like wearing scarves when it's really sunny. And our social media manager was like, we have really good interaction for a financial intermediary with our community, and community is something we understand in crypto. So we might have 5 interactions on a social media post. As soon as we post anything that has Torino content, you can times that by 10. There's like a passionate, engaged community, and that's a way to really reconnect.
Sure. To go back to the question on why Web3, for us, the way we position it was quite simple. Web3 unlocks a new way of not only interacting with your fine, as you rightly mentioned, but is also, even if you remove the sports element of it, just Web3 enables you to create new digital assets that can be owned directly by people and transferred across platforms and across activation. And to the sport entities, they were really, first, sport entities are really bad in technology, so I think that the first step you go to them is discussing education. So before you pitch anything, you educate to the sports team because they are very, very far behind when it comes to the blockchain and crypto vibe. So you try to explain them that by creating a new digital asset that they will be able to unlock new revenue streams that didn't exist before. And on our case, one of the key accelerator was COVID, which is sometimes very unusual, but like for sports clubs, suddenly all the stadiums were empty, so all your main source of revenue disappears. So then how can you reposition your business model in order to target people that are actually not going to come to the stadium? So that's why if you create digital assets, like it's always the same explanation that we take. If you were to guess which country has actually the most highest number of football fans, it's not Spain, it's not Italy, it's China, by far. And China never goes see a game because most of these Chinese users, they will never have the ability to interact with their team and go see a game. So how can you engage with these remote users in a different way? So that's why we decided to create digital assets that will only mostly target these teams these users that don't get the opportunity to meet their teams by going to the stadium.
Yeah, exactly. To jump back on Julian, I think for most federation, blockchain, Web3 is a black box. So just going to them and saying, this is great, just try it, it won't work. Also, one big misconception that people do is to consider sport as a whole, which is not the case. Actually, into sport, you have international federation with many differences in size, in technology readiness, as you said, in budget, in fan base, etc. Then you have national federation, and in between you also have the media, the sponsor, athletes, clubs, leagues, etc. So all this word needs to work together. So you really need to address them and really pinpoint their needs. And I think starting from the challenge, like what are the challenges you're facing, really going in depth would really help, and then coming with, okay, so you can actually solve your challenge with blockchain, with Web3, and then it starts to unlock possibilities. But I think the question, does the sport industry needs Web3? Yes, probably, but the first step is really to identify what they're facing as a challenge and really go with a solution that they can understand that is solving this problem directly. And that's basically the work we're doing at ThinkSport, is to identify those challenges, which is not a super easy way to do, actually.
So what I'm hearing, just to synopsize, are Web3 for governance, and Web3 to offer unique new fan engagement experiences that weren't possible in Web2. What I'm not hearing is come and do something in Web3 and make a ton of money real fast. And that was the motive, I think, of a lot of companies coming into the space in the first NFT boom. One thing that we really noticed at Serotonin was we would be getting outreach from the revenue officer or from people having to do with the company's bottom line. And then it became the marketing lead because they wanted to market the fact that the company was doing something innovative. And then over time, it became the CIO's office, innovation, people trying to figure out new ways to do CRMs and target customers, people trying to figure out, what's the future and how do we offer people more engaged experiences. But as that transition happened, also a lot of that outreach went away and died down. So that's been an interesting transition. I guess in that context, what would each of you say are the success examples? What is out there in market right now that illustrates what's possible with sports and entertainment on chain? And as specific as you can make your examples, that would be great. What does that success look like? Is it measured in revenue? Is it measured in number of transactions, number of wallets? And what are those success metrics?
Yeah, sure. So I want to do a quick experiment to do this. So looking at the audience, who of you has engaged in sports or through sports with a Web3 application with your favorite team or sports organization? I mean, just raise your hand, like properly engaged in some way or the other. So we have probably the most educated ecosystem around here today, and we have maybe 5, maybe 10%. So you're asking about success factors. I think sports hasn't found its use case yet, its proper use case. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit regarding the fan tokens. To be honest with you, do we really need blockchain for this to engage with the Chinese fans? But you ask about success factors, so let's look at numbers. I mean, everyone knows SoRare. I guess SoRare is a familiar concept. It's basically Panini pictures, you know, the Panini albums that we had as kids, combined with fantasy sports, super successful, 4 billion valuation. So I think that's the number. So if you do it right, and if you sell it right, you can make a lot of money, but I'm still not convinced that you need Web3 for it, actually. But we'll come back to that, I guess, in a second.
Just on Sorare, last valuation is 500 million. So
I guess it went down.
Yeah, it went down, so just to showcase that maybe the use case is not there. On Sorare example.
Well, I would think of probably the most developed example, maybe not in terms of numbers, it's not, you know, FIFA, that I've heard of is actually SailGP, which is a challenger organization to the Royal Ocean Racing Club. And they have basically come in and tried to revolutionize sailing. They've put more emphasis on tech, they've put more emphasis on fan engagement, more emphasis on, so each boat will have 10 miles worth of fiber optic cables, 30,000 sensors. So really pushing tech. And what they did is they launched the possibility for DAO-owned teams, fan-owned teams on the blockchain. They launched on the NEAR blockchain, so we heard from NEAR yesterday at Crypto Valley, so they're represented here, which is SailGP, not so much, but they actually, the first team actually successfully got funded. No person, they put built-in restrictions into the token release, so no one was able to buy more than 200,000, so there would be no majority owner. That was successfully launched. The first boat left, the first team was launched for the Bahamas and some affiliated islands, and you know, they had to think about it because it can't be a true DAO, because when it comes to like the team's doctor and stuff, some decisions not going to be taken by the token owners. But, you know, I think it was like it's a very developed idea and it's actually succeeded and it's a really interesting use case. I mean, sailing's not the biggest sport in the world, but they've actually got the biggest viewing figures after the America's Cup, which is really the biggest event. And I may be a bit invested in this because I'm a sailor, but, you know, I think it's a really interesting case because it's very developed. I also think that, you know, we're not just here to talk about sport. Like you can look at 3Allow, the Australian DJ, launching a royalties platform. Royalties for songwriting aren't securities. They can already be traded, not with tokenization, but it allows for more transparency and more frictionless transactions. Exactly the same thing we're talking about with cryptocurrency. And, you know, there's been a lot of corruption in music licensing. I mean, we've all seen the Taylor Swift law cases and all of that. So it's really interesting to see these products which are more developed, maybe not on scale yet, but, you know, yeah, you can just see it's been executed and well thought through, and it's not collapsed like the teams are actually going.
Examples of things, what's going well, specifics, what are the success cases?
Well, I could be speaking about us, but then that would be a bit dry. So just because you're asking for some numbers, We have onboarded over 150 sports teams. We have 2 million users. We give back more than 500 million back to the industry in terms of revenue sharing as part of the partnership, sales of fan token and others. So we have helped the industry move into the Web3 component. To go back to the example of do you need fan tokens, I would say if you use them only on one app, as it used to be the case initially potentially with Socios.com like 3-4 years ago, you're still on a Web 2.5 element, meaning you can only activate your fan token in one place, then I would agree you don't necessarily need blockchain because anyway you're centralizing the activation. That's why in the end we move our Chiliz chain from a L2 to a L1. So then when now with your token, you can activate your token. You go on Atletico Madrid, we announced it last week. You go on the Atletico Madrid website, you can activate your fan tokens that will give you discount on something that you're going to buy directly on the website. You go on Nike, on any other sports equipment, soon you will be able to activate your fan token as well, and then you will get rewarded because you have this specific interaction with your club. So this element of what could be missing is the ability that you need to be able to transfer and activate your asset across different platforms to truly benefit from the Web3 component, which is ownership and transferability of digital asset. That will be for me, that's the key success factor in the Web3 element.
Just a sec to respond to that. I mean, that's an extremely nice way of explaining it, and I appreciate it. And I think that's exactly what I meant by talking about governance. At the end, governance is identity, ownership. It may be payment too. I mean, how it's being done, etc. And that's exactly where the value lies. So, hats off to you guys. I mean, that's amazing that you did that. And just believe me, there's so many different governance cases in sports, and the cool thing about sports, and that's what you explained, it's a nice place to start something big. Like you can make ownership of a boat team or even of a sports team potentially fan owned. It's possible. I mean, we're not talking about owning a bank or whatever. So that's the cool thing about sports. So if you're ever into finding a niche to start something cool, I mean, sports is definitely the place to be, but you still have to think of real use cases and not just use Web3 because it's a hype right now. And I think we're seeing that with the NFTs, by the way.
Yeah, and just to slightly slide on to that last remark about governance, as the compliance officer on the panel, I just had to note that actually the interesting thing about the fan ownership in that use case I was talking about, SailGP, it's like 5,000 a token, I think. But the interesting thing is they've actually gone and engaged with the SEC. That DAO is actually registered with the Securities Exchange, and it's nice to see a token where they weren't just running away from it being labeled as a security, and they were actually using it for fundraising. It's actually demonstrating it's actually a viable mechanism. And we all have seen issues in regulation in the US, but it's a clear use case in which actually they're very comfortable with multiple registered owners. And you have the Green Bay Packers who've been for 200 years. I mean, you can't do it in the NFL anymore because the state's got a bit upset with that, and there's now no more than 30% of a team other than the Green Bay Packers can be owned. But they've done it. They've opened up a team. It's a security. They can trade it. They can, use the sensors to monetize the boat, to improve the efficiencies. So I was just interested to see they haven't been afraid of engaging with regulators, and this is an actual fundraising and financing mechanism, and it's been demonstrated.
So you bring us to an interesting spot talking about regulation to the next question I was planning to ask you, which is challenges that some of these sports and entertainment projects and use cases face when they're getting into Web3. What do you think the main obstacles are that are preventing some of these teams, leagues, projects, founders, companies, investors from getting into the space, and how do you think we surmount them?
I guess I can speak on the sports side. So what we realized when we're launching innovation, we really need to take people from the challenge side. So it always works better if you say, okay, we will talk about this, come during a session. We'll discuss it with the experts, and we will see what works, what don't work. We will co-create together. So what we do, and that's really helping, is to have a common talk and really set the basics. So that's what we understand on the topic, that's where we are now, and that's where we want to go. So it always helps. And also having people discussing a topic with experts during, for example, an entire day for a workshop, it really builds trust, and that's really help in going in the right direction. So I think, as we already said, like sports is kind of moving slowly, and people are really risk averse. So you really need to bring them in the topic step by step. And then by building this trust and going into the Web3 direction, then we start like going into where we want to go. But really, like the Web3, the blockchain, it's not a goal on itself. It's really a way to reach something and to solve a problem. And wherever the problem you have, if it goes through Web3 blockchain, it's fine. If it goes on another way, it's also fine. But yeah, it's always useful to like hook them and then go forward with the topic.
So I actually had the pleasure to be supported by Célia and her company. So we started a so-called Web3 for Sports Data Innovation Booster. And one of the key learnings was actually the proof of concept that we were able to do afterwards. It was about identity. So we established a proof of concept for a running identity, which sort of solved the problem of being a completely scattered community in the digital world. So the running community in Switzerland, 400,000 people going to races, events every year, is in the physical world, they're all super nicely unified. But as soon as it comes to the digital world, they are totally scattered. They lose them to these digital platforms like Strava, you may know them, or others. So this was really their challenge. And by introducing this running ID concept, we did the first step to actually solve them this problem. What was also cool, and that's maybe another thing to mention here quickly, we were able to link this running ID to something that the Swiss government is actually right now establishing. So we build it on the self-sovereign identity principle. With Tim, we have someone in the room here that helped us from the university side. So the cool thing is we try to combine different things, even bringing together different worlds. So we have the government world with an electronic identity based on the self-sovereign identity principle, which is not a crypto wallet you need, it's another wallet, as you may know. So trying to bring all these things together, we benefited a lot, and that's definitely the way to go. So be pragmatic, basically, and that's what you're saying by making it not the goal, but just a means to an end, the Web3.
I do want to get back to the question about challenges that are preventing adoption and how we surmount them.
Sorry for that. So what I actually wanted to say is just tech is less important than culture. So basically you have to build that culture first. You have to need to build that understanding first. You have to understand the problem. And then we need you guys to give us a solution with Web3.
I mean, I would go back to what you were saying earlier, is that there's been a kind of disabusal of trust, just because at the moment, at the inception of the NFTs entering popular culture, there were a lot of people coming in just trying to make a quick buck. Like we have this week in the US, there's a class action lawsuit, Brown versus Dolce & Gabbana, and that was an experiential, it was an entertainment thing. They were supposed to be going to events and shows and also getting real world, phygital. They were supposed to be getting real, and after 2 of 8, they just closed the token and ran away, and they've basically been accused of a rug pull. And so there is that lack of trust that you brought up earlier. We all have heard, and also just bad ownership design. People releasing NFTs where, essentially it was a receipt for nothing. There was no specific license, or in some cases there was such a restrictive license that people then were sold misadvertising, basically. But then I would also say, I think there's the question of, is it an experience the fans actually want? Do you know who your fans actually are? Do you think your fans are 16-year-olds when they're actually 65-year-olds? Are you targeting esports fans who are like, I can get that already? You don't need to sell it to me on a blockchain. I think that's probably something that Julian would know more about. But yeah, in terms of, it's just the lack of credibility. And also, you know, popular culture's moved on to AI at the moment.
Because you're going to push us to give us the answer, so I'm going to try to give you the concrete answer that you want in a bullet point list, because I see that's what you want. So I would say number one is education. That's what was mentioned. Like they don't, the sports team or any, and that's not necessarily sports, but like people don't understand what Web3 is and how they can use it. Second one that was well explained as well is that you need to have the right tools and tech to make it feasible. MetaMask is great, but still my parents will never use MetaMask. It's too difficult, it's too complex, it's too scary. Now that we move to account abstraction and the other type of stuff, it's coming, so it's easier, but you need to give a bit of time to the tech to become user-friendly enough to go to mass adoption. Regulation, rightly mentioned as well, because we all in this space experimenting, and then suddenly the regulator might wake up, because not all regulators are as pragmatic as the Swiss one, and FINMA who is going to hold your hand and discuss with you, open a sandbox approach where you can make sure that you can experiment together and not sue you 2 years after like the US will do it. So I guess these three elements are really key. And to close it off is, yeah, we have seen, but we should not be too harsh on the sports Web3 industry. It's like just poor use cases, or use cases that didn't bring any value to the user. Can be a rug plot, can be an NFT collection that you cannot activate, but that you see it in any industry. Any new technology that comes into life bring his side of very, very cool project and his side of very, very bad project. Just use internet. Like, look at what you see online.
Yeah, I think these are all great points. There's some tech hardening and maturity. There's some need for discovery of product market fit use cases. And of course, there's the regulatory uncertainty. I think also it's an interesting point for the future. As more value comes on chain, once value is on chain, there are penalties to taking it back off chain. And so when you just have more disposable income and more fans and more purchasing power on chain, then I think you naturally get more customers for these kinds of like Web3 on chain experiences, whether they're with their favorite artists, their favorite sports teams, what have you. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that migration accompanying where the demand and where the disposable income is located. And that's a kind of positive tailwind behind this. I guess we've seen so many different kinds of projects attempt this. I'm curious, when you talk to companies or teams or leagues that are going to attempt to get into Web3, what are the pitfalls that you advise them to avoid? How do you make sure that they don't do it wrong?
Go on. No, go.
Don't be shy, guys. We all among friends. It's only crypto people here. It's only cool people. On our case, what we did, step by step, team by team. So we didn't try to launch a solution that will be, you don't impose a solution the same way to all the different teams, because each team, they all believe they're different, and it's actually quite true. They don't have the same type of fan base. They don't have the same technological maturity. They don't face the same demographics. So it's really, and that's what a lot of people always accuse blockchain or Web3 is doing, is trying to find a problem in which Web3 is going to fit. So for us, it's more do it the other way around. What will be the value proposition that you offer to the club? And if actually Web3 makes sense, then use it. If you want to do it without Web3, do it without Web3. So don't be an extremist or a maximalist of Web3. Just make sure, if you need to keep it to, for us, the success will be that people don't even understand that fan tokens are crypto or Web3. Like you connect, you use them. I don't need you to understand that it's Web3. If for you it's working and it's delivering the value that you need, and yes, from a technological standpoint, it needs to be Web3, but you don't need to understand that it's Web3. For me, that will be the success, the tech to become invisible in that aspect.
Just to add on that, I think it will be important to know where the power is in the sport ecosystem, which means who has the right to unlock or the opposite if the solution is put in place. So sometimes you think it's the federation, sometimes it's not, sometimes it's the sponsor, sometimes it's the media. So you really need to understand how that value chain is made, and then really tackle and onboard the right stakeholder to make sure it doesn't go up, and then fall because you didn't realize there is a glass ceiling sooner than expected.
Yeah, I would, just adding on top of both of what they're saying, I think a lot of importance should actually be placed on the fact that Web3, you don't need to be announcing that you're using Web3. Web3 you should be using it because it's actually like you're getting more frictionless transactions, or you want the transparency, you want to avoid the corruption that has plagued certain sports organizations. You know, there's use cases, but also at the same time, we need to learn from the existing industry. You still need to study your market. You still need to know who your fans are, whether you're an artist, a musical artist, a sports team. You need to understand your fans and how you're making their lives easier, because fans, like, culturally, they will turn on you. If they think you are taking advantage of them, like, they will not be quiet about that. We can see that in the crypto community. If people think that, you know, someone is taking advantage of them, it'll be all over Reddit, all over Discord. You know, there will be chat in the corridors of conferences. This is like fundamental, is like the same way that we learn in implementing crypto travel rule from the original like SWIFT payment mechanisms. The same way like if you're doing marketing, if you're tokenizing royalties, like these legal problems have been discussed before, and you should only be using Web3 if it's actually making delivery more efficient. And yeah, a lot of people aren't actually paying attention. They're just trying to use it, and they don't understand what they're using, and then you end up with these projects selling nothing or just collapsing because there was no desire for it.
So just to add up on this, so the word fundamental, I think, is key here. I mean, it is fundamental, so you have to understand your market. But I experienced in many of the projects that when you tackle the fundamental problems of an industry, you always run into a collective action problem. Because with blockchain, you can solve fundamental stuff. I call it governance. I mean, whatever you want to call it, you can solve it. However, it's not a big investment case. And I think some of you may know what I'm referring to. At the end, you want to optimize things. You want to use those smart contracts, like the entire toolbox, the tokens, the smart contracts, the wallets, but it's all not a great investment case in itself. So this is a big challenge, but the good thing in sports, you always have governing bodies. Some of them have money, like the International Olympic Committee or big sports federations. So when you face those challenges, you need to convince these big non-profit governing bodies to actually see it as a way of developing their sports, and then you can prevail, basically.
One last lightning round question before we turn it over to the audience for some Q&A. Super lightning, what is your prediction for what's going to happen this year at the intersection of sports and Web3?
I want to see a solution for the current ticketing pricing issue in, let's say, in soccer. So fans, they feel that they have to pay more because clubs want to make more. So I want to see a project that actually tokenizes a club so the fans can be in charge again. But for this, the clubs do actually want to embrace or have to embrace this idea. And I haven't seen that yet, except for sailing.
Wow, new cases every day. Well, in terms of ticketing, it doesn't just have to be on club ownership. Luma has been doing ticketing for even just events around Crypto Valley conference, and so maybe just, you know, seeing more companies like using that for ticketing would be good. I think we'll see. Well, we won't see because it will be behind the scenes. But I think in terms of predictions for this year, I'm going to go small and say that, you know, image copyrights, sport licensing, behind the scenes, these are very messy legal contracts. Like image rights don't even exist in and of themselves in many countries. They're just constructs of contract law. So I think we'll see more tokenization of that just to try and keep track of the multiple parties that are involved in image rights, in broadcasting. Like it's a fundamentally complex thing. Like you have the individual players or artists have the right to their image, the club or the venue, the stadium, if it's an away team, like if it's like an artist performing at a stadium or a gallery, like who has the rights of broadcast of the images that are going to the newspapers. Everyone has a share, and it's just it's already being implemented, and it's a way to keep track. And I would say that that's probably like a manageable, you know, thing. I'm a lawyer, I'm going to be reserved and say that, you know, I think that that's probably where we'll see some concrete development.
Yeah, I think I will go so with the athletes, getting the power back to them, who owns the data. And I think it's rising, like more and more athletes are asking, what do you do with my data? So I guess there will be, and it will move in a direction or another, but I think it's going in the right direction. And for them to really know what's going on and where the money is coming, and if they can have a share in it, that would be great.
This year, I hope that we finally get MiCA to go through. Speaking about regulation, that will give a lot of clarity for the European market, for sure. Interoperability of the chain, more and more. Consolidation of the chain, so what we call M&A of tokens. That's
what chains are you building on, by the way?
Chiliz chain.
Oh, you're building your own on
Yeah, we have our own chain. We used to be. No, it's a fair question. We used to be a L2 protocol built on EVM compatible BNB chain, but now we switched to our own chain more than 18 months ago. But yes,
still EVM compatible or no?
Yes, I want to say of course, but it's not. Some people might disagree, but yeah, when you want to attract developers and the tooling, it's way easier to remain EVM compatible. The one that didn't do it, it's a bit more tricky. To drive adoption, so yeah, interoperability and consolidation of chains.
Amazing. Well, I think we kind of blew through our time that we had for Q&A in order to get the last remarks from our panelists, but I'm sure everyone's going to be around after if you want to meet them and ask questions. Thanks so much, Crypto Valley, for having us come and speak, for hosting, and thanks to our audience and our panelists.